What's up, Grinders? Welcome to the Week 7 edition of The First Look here on Roto Grinders, the first of 5, maybe even more hours of coverage of NFL this weekend. I am Brit Devine. I am joined today by Chris Beermakersfan Prince and Paul Boggslite Arrington. We are sponsored by DraftKings, who yet again this week is going to make another person a millionaire playing fantasy football. It's crazy. Guys, how's it going? I'm going to start with Paul first this time. I usually always go with you first, Beer. We're going to switch it up today.
Yeah, let's mix it up. I'm doing pretty well. I actually came pretty damn close to taking down that $1 million tournament on Sunday, if not for a complete meltdown by Russell Wilson. But, it is what it is. It was, good lineup. It really takes a solid lineup to win that thing, but I had a bunch of great value plays hit for me, so I cashed a ton of lineups, and it was a solid overall weekend.
Yeah, I saw you up near the top there, so congratulations to that. One of these first couple of weeks here on DraftKings, I had a sweat before it was the Millionaire Maker in the Sunday Million. I think I finished up in like 15th or something like that, so that was a nice sweat. It's always nice to have a good sweat going into some of the later games, so congrats there, Boggs. And Beer, let's get to you here. I just saw you on TV, my man. You're all over those ads. So how's it going for you today?
It's going well. Apparently, we have no sound, according to the chat.
No, I think they're just kidding. Those guys are kidding.
Okay. Was that an inside joke I missed?
It's because we deal with it with the other ones.
All right, so we'll continue on then. Good call. I'm good, man. It was a crazy week. A lot of guys dropped a bomb on us that we were counting on for big things. So that's DFS, though. You win some, you lose some, you move to the next week. And yeah, you do have a lot of hair product in there. I saw a comment in the chat. What's going on, man?
You never know who's watching.
The first look.
You never know who's watching these shows, so you got to come with your game right on point every time. That's all.
Right. Hey, you're right, man. All it takes is one. So ready to talk Week 7, though. Week 6 had some good, had some bad, but ready to move on. Another full slate of games this week.
Yeah, let's get right into Week 7 here. We're going to start with this Thursday game, Jets at Patriots in the monsoon. It's monsooning at my house right now. It's going to stay over this whole Northeast. And on Thursday at Foxborough, it's supposed to rain a ton. The over-under is kind of dropping on this game a little bit. The Pats defense, Beer, first defense, number one defense for me this week. I think they're just going to totally annihilate this Jets team. No pass game. It's going to turn into a muddy mess there. Loving the Pats D. But outside of that on offense, I have no idea if I can trust any of these guys if people are playing the Thursday games for offense. What's your take on it?
Yeah, the defense definitely a gimme. We know Geno Smith or Vic or whoever it may be definitely going to have some turnovers, so that's a given. The running back position's interesting here. You would think Vereen would get the uptick here, but he's really not an every down back, and they've never really used him in that role. So hard to say if he gets the uptick. Brandon Bolden would be the logical answer, but he's a special teams monster for them on all 4 kick units. So I don't know that they want to adjust that. James White's a guy that I like a lot, obviously from Wisconsin. I've seen a lot of them, but to me he's not a special back. He's an average guy, does a lot of things good, doesn't really do anything extraordinary. So just a guy. So 3 of those guys, somebody's really going to get the uptick here, but it's going to be hard to predict. It's Belichick, so it's really a stay away for me. You're really rolling the dice if you put any 3 of these guys. Vereen would be the safest. At least he's going to get some passing work, but the other 2, who knows who it's going to be. It could be Cyrus Gray, I think, is the other guy in the mix. So with Belichick, you never know. I think Gronk's a slam dunk, got a little banged up last week, but he looks good to go. Receiver-wise, again, Edelman will have his good weeks on a PPR site. LaFell, boom, bust tournament option. So Gronk for me, Vereen, okay, and the defense for sure. Other than that, it's going to be a game I sit back and watch. Not going to be playing a whole lot of Thursday.
Yeah, if you're playing Thursday on DraftKings, let me throw a hypothetical at you on halfback. Shane Vereen, 6,500. Le'Veon Bell, 6,600. I mean, to me, it's pretty, in a Bill Belichick system, I'm going to be avoiding Shane Vereen on DraftKings. His price is just a little bit too high when you compare it to some of these other guys out there. I really like the defense. They are the highest priced defense by far. If you can afford them, I think they're going to be extremely popular in the Thursday games. And you make a good point. Halfback you just don't know. Going to be staying away. Gronk, though. He's about a sure bet in this mud game. Hitting on these 5-10 yard routes. Going to be a monster in the red zone. I don't mind Gronk at all if you're taking some of these Patriots in the Thursday games. Boggs, let's go to the Jets side, and I don't think I can use a single Jets player. The Jets defense, the kicker in this game, if I'm playing Thursday games, I am avoiding the entire situation.
Yeah, I was about to say let's not go to me for the Jets because I got nothing either.
Let's speed it up. I think that's all we need.
There's nothing to get excited about with this Jets team.
Take a drink of beer, buddy, and we'll move on.
Yeah, me.
Cheers.
No interest in anyone at all, though, just to be serious. No Decker. No Ivory, maybe in the mud.
Nope. Well, I will say one thing. Monsoon is different than rain. When it's rain, especially light rain, that actually benefits the quarterback. These quarterbacks, they get a better feel. Little ball comes a little more sticky. But it sounds like the weather's going to be pretty horrendous out there. So it's going to be a sloppy, messy game. I love watching those games. Like Beer said, just as a fan. But aside from that, I think it's a good week. Again, kind of like even though we were a little bit wrong on that game last Thursday, to just fade it and hopefully that your players, if you play some cash games or some double ups, people are going to want some exposure to that game. So if you fade it and you're confident with your team and maybe on a site that doesn't offer late swap, I think it's a good game to get some action in if you got your teams ready for Sunday.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to fear from the Jets offense, and with how rainy and muddy it's going to be, I don't expect a lot of offensive production. So you do make a good point. Maybe you do want to play these Thursday games and fade the game. I wouldn't be against that at all. Next game, Beer, let's go to Atlanta at Baltimore. I wonder what the odds were last week on Joe Flacco throwing 4 touchdowns in about 5 minutes and ending the game with 5 touchdowns. What's your take on this? Should people be chasing it in cash games, in GPPs? A guy I'm really targeting in this game, Justin Forsett. He's pretty much emerged as the lead dog in Baltimore. I'm loving Forsett, reasonably priced around the industry, along with both receivers in this game against Atlanta. I'm expecting Atlanta to kind of get it handed to him this week in Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree. Forsett got a very high prestige position in the six-pack this week, so go check that out. A little shameless plug, but I do love him this week. A lot of people are talking Pierce. Pierce got 15 carries last week, but that game was out of hand. A lot of that came in garbage time. So Forsett, to me, the clear number 1 back here. The other guys are just going to be sprinkled in. So he's a great play this week. Flacco, yes, you're chasing points, but the matchup is great. So do quarterbacks throw 5 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks? Unless you're named Peyton Manning, I don't think so. But I don't see any reason Flacco can't throw 2-3 scores. They got Torrey Smith back in the game plan. Steve Smith's still looking good. Owen Daniels had an off week, but he's definitely been a good part of this offense. So all in all, I think the Baltimore offense in a great spot. Just set your expectations reasonably on Flacco. I don't know that I'd go there in cash games. I think there's some other guys I would trust a bit more, but there is a lot of upside here. I think Baltimore's going to put up another big day against Atlanta on the road.
If you're playing in the Millionaire Maker, Steve Smith, 6,700. Torrey Smith, 4,400. If you take price into account, who's more likely to make your Millionaire Maker lineup there?
I would go with Torrey Smith. I think just the boom-bust proposition that he is makes him perfect for a tournament play. We saw him get 2 touchdowns early on. We know he's a deep threat in that offense, and they're trying to get him more involved. So they're both great plays, but with price mixed in, I'd go with Torrey.
Any interest in the Ravens defense? I actually like the Ravens defense in GPPs like this Millionaire Maker. People will be scared off of Atlanta, or off of them due to Atlanta's name value. But I have no confidence in Atlanta on the road in Baltimore. The offensive line looks beat up. I'm expecting Baltimore to handle them pretty well. Would you take a shot on the Ravens defense?
I think they could be a sneaky tournament D. I wouldn't have them in my top 6 or 7 for the week. But Atlanta does struggle a bit on the road. Matt Ryan, not the same guy. I do expect Atlanta to bounce back a little bit in this game. So not as high in Baltimore's D, but they are on my radar.
Boggs, let's go to the Atlanta side here. Matt Ryan struggled. Julio Jones struggled. The whole Atlanta offense struggled, except Smith. He seems to catch a 50-yard touchdown every single week. What's your take on this Atlanta offense? I'm just trying to be honest. I am not going to have much exposure to this Atlanta offense this week.
Yeah, I don't think I will either. I was kind of taking a peek, trying to dig a little bit deeper, um, and really try and find a reason because I do, love Matty Ice, and I'm very biased towards him, and I obviously love Julio Jones, but it's the same type of defense, if not better, for Baltimore this week, and you factor in they're on the road. I think the real struggles are coming down to Roddy White not really being a really great complementary option to Julio Jones. And we saw Kyle Fuller of the Bears, the cornerback, who's having a tremendous season. It gets tougher this week as Julio Jones is likely going to be up against Jimmy Smith all game long, and for that reason, I just can't really find a way to work these guys into my lineups, despite their very 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 cheap and attractive prices. I think a lot of this Atlanta offense this season is at least the woes have come down to Roddy White, like I said, and without having a decent third option like they had last year with Tony Gonzalez. So without a tight end or a safety net for Matt Ryan to throw to and a banged up offensive line, I think these struggles are going to continue this week for Atlanta.
If you're running multiple teams, let's say 15 or 20, would you put a bullet on Matt Ryan to Julio Jones this week?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, he's a little banged up, but he's still, among an elite receivers in the league, and almost, always a must start when he's healthy. So I don't hate the call, but I will say really quick on DraftKings at Roddy White's price. What are your guys' take on maybe throwing him in your? Is he in play for cash games for you guys?
I mean, I had him in there last week, and it didn't work out too well at home, and I'm certainly not going to bite the bullet this week at 4,100. I think there's some other guys, some value at halfback, value at quarterback this week. I don't know if I really want to risk Roddy White this week on the road. What about you, Beer?
I'm not seeing it. He just doesn't look like the same guy. He may have suffered another concussion last week, according to what I'm reading. So I'm avoiding. The price is nice, but sometimes that's not always the answer. So I think there's some other value. Real quick, back to Forsett. We know Atlanta, I forgot to mention, the worst team against the run in the league by far. It's not even close. It's like a 5-point gap to the next closest team. They've given up 12 rushing touchdowns as well. So makes Forsett an even better play. As far as Atlanta, Julio Jones, Atlanta gets the stigma of being a better team at home. Julio Jones' stats are off the chart in road games. Over a 20-20 split of games, his stats crush his home stats when he's on the road. So just something to think about. You got to assume they're going to be playing behind. No issues with Julio in a tournament.
Yeah, and a receiver can have a very good game while a quarterback has a horrible game. So it's very easy for Julio to have 100 yards, 8 receptions, and a touchdown, and Matt Ryan to not have a great game. That's kind of how, if those stats, I'm going to trust Beer on that, with Matty Ice on the road kind of struggles, it is still easy for a receiver to have a good game when a quarterback struggles. Next game here, Titans at the Redskins here. I think there's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks in this game. I like a lot of the Redskins. I like a lot of the Titans. So Beer, Cousins to me, Morris, Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed's back. All these guys are in play for me in both cash games and GPPs. Are you loving the Skins this week?
Yeah, I think they're in a great spot. Cousins probably one of the top value plays on the board, depending on your site. But he's a guy that's going to throw it. He hasn't had less than 33 attempts in any game this year. Generally, a guy that's going to hit 300 yards, so you're going to get that bonus if you're playing on DraftKings. And they're going to attack through the air. So it makes Jackson a phenomenal target. Garcon, I expect to bounce back. And Reed came in and was great in his first game back. 8 catches, 90-some yards in the debut. They obviously use the tight end a lot in this offense. Whether it was Paul, Reed, they're getting a ton of targets. So Reed's price is still down. That price will jump up. So grab him while you can. I think Morris is the one not a lot of people are going to be looking at based on the last couple of games. But I expect a big bounce back. I think they're going to emphasize the run. They're going to attack through the air after they establish the run. I think Washington could put a 30-burger up on the board, no problem this week. Morris will be the guy you want to target that won't be very highly owned in this one. And even the defense could be in play, whether it's Locker or Whitehurst, could cause some turnovers there. They haven't been very good. They've been good against the run, but I think Washington could be a good tournament defense as well.
Boggs, let's go to the Titans here. Quarterback, it's still not known. Jake Locker or Whitehurst. If Locker's in, if he gets a report on Friday, he's going to play, and it looks like he's good in practice. I will be using Locker in a lot of GPPs around the industry. The Skins secondary, horrible. Really like the passing game. Halfbacks for the Titans, not so much. It's going to be a mess this week. But the receivers in the tight end, Kendall Wright, Justin Hunter, Delaney Walker, no problem using any of those guys this week as well. What's your take on the Titans?
Yeah, it's really going to all come down to Jake Locker's status. We obviously don't know that now, but assuming he does play, I'm right on board with you. I definitely love him. We saw what Russell Wilson did to this Washington defense, and they're horrible in the secondary. And Locker, don't forget, he's dealing, I believe it's a hand injury, right? Not a leg or a rib or anything.
He's got a couple. It's like a thumb and a wrist all going on.
Look, the guy's made of glass. We all know that. But the bottom line is he's got wheels, and he can run, similar to Russell Wilson if there's nothing open downfield. So I do love Jake Locker as a GPP play. I would never use him in cash games because of his propensity to get injured. But aside from that, it's tough. Because it depends who's getting the snaps in practice. The wide receiver, kind of carousel it's kind of a mess right now. You don't know which guy's really going to emerge. Obviously, Beer, I'm sure you'd love it to be Justin Hunter. Same here, but I can't rely upon that. So I would be a little hesitant. I think that just getting a Locker is all the exposure you would need. But again, if you want to in a GPP, if you've got multiple lineups, stack Locker with one of the different weapons. Locker with Walker. I'm mixing my words up here. Kendall Wright or Justin Hunter. I wouldn't stack them all up because it's just not the way this offense is operated all year long. But Locker for sure. Questionable on the receivers and also Delaney Walker. But yeah, not going to sniff that running back situation. It's just it's dreadful.
Yeah, with Sean Greenback, guys, avoid the halfback situation.
And really quickly before we move on, I do want to kind of touch on Alfred Morris. He's my number one price play at running back this week. Tennessee, on paper they say they're middle of the pack. They really haven't played very many run-heavy oriented offenses. This linebacking core is very small and undersized for the Titans. Go back and look what DeMarco Murray did against this defense in week 2. I'm not going to say Alfred Morris is going to rush for 200 yards or whatnot, but when you get a bruiser that can really do some damage, you can get through these Titans front seven. So I do like Alfred Morris a lot this week.
He's 4,700 on DraftKings this week. Very cheap because he's usually not involved in the passing game, but it is very possible he could get 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I'm going to pose a question to Beer here real quick. Also coming in at 4,700, my man, Eddie Lacy. If you had to choose between the two this week, Alfred Morris or Eddie Lacy, put your preferences aside. And this GPP to win $1 million, who would you be taking at that same price point?
All right, you ready for the hometown bias? I'm going with Alfred Morris. No doubt about it. Green Bay, we'll get to Green Bay, so I'm not going to go on and on here about them, but clearly a split right now. Morris, no doubt about it, at the same price.
Next game, Seattle at the Rams. Beer, I'm going to make this real easy. I have no Rams on my radar at all this week. No kicker, no defense, no quarterback, no receivers, nothing. Are you with me?
Yeah, no, it's my turn to have a drink. How about that? But, I wouldn't mind a tournament shot on Austin Davis. I like what I've seen from this kid. The Seattle D, is this just an anomaly? They're having a few bad games. Is this the new Seattle D? What do we got going on here?
We're finding out this week. They've played a lot of good teams. I think we find out for real kind of where they stand against the Rams this week.
I mean, the Rams looked great in the first quarter. I mean, they were driving up and down the field. Austin Davis looked legit, and then it was like the switch turned off and we're done here, and San Francisco did whatever the hell they wanted. So in a tournament, I don't mind that. I wouldn't mind going back to the well and quick. Who had a down game, nobody will be on him. Going against Sherman, I think they find ways to get him the ball away from Sherman. The running game's a mess. I think you're going to see Trey Mason emerge eventually. But for now, you got 3-4 guys all involved in the running game, so I don't want any part of that. So, yeah, it's tough to pull the trigger on any Rams. Davis would be a deep, deep tournament flyer for me. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to see here.
Yeah, I just don't see maybe Davis. Let me check and see what his price here is on DraftKings for this Millionaire Maker. He's coming in at 5,800. I mean, you can get Derek Carr for that price. You got Ben Roethlisberger cheaper, Bortles, Hoyer. I just don't see that pretty much any way Davis can have 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, a huge game against the Seattle D. Some of these other guys can down there for that price point, and you need one of those for this Millionaire Maker. I'm not a single Ram is going to sniff my Millionaire Maker lineups this week. And that's going to bring me to you, Boggs, for Seattle. And I'm going to be pretty honest here. Outside of maybe Russell Wilson solo and maybe one Marshawn Lynch lineup, I don't think many Seattle Seahawks are going to sniff my Millionaire Maker lineups either. Going against Seattle, or in St. Louis actually, just don't see a lot of value, a lot of upside in the Seattle offense.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's certainly there, but it's just tough where it's going to come from on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, mentioned early in the show that Russell Wilson burned me last week, but at $6,800 prior to last week, this guy was as consistent as you could, really be. Had pretty much a relative floor of around 18 points. Obviously a terrible week last week, but I can't see him coming out and shit in the bed 2 weeks in a row. I think Russell Wilson, like we always mention, is a fine guy to just take alone. You don't necessarily have to pair him with anyone, but Percy Harvin's sitting all the way down there at $4,100. So that's very tempting.
Three receptions, 0 yards last week. He hasn't had a lot going on. He's going to have one of those big games. He had those 3 touchdowns called back on him. I think he might be a sleeper pick this week. He's going to have one of these weeks. He's going to have a Percy Harvin game where he has 10 receptions, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it's just so tough to pick the Seattle offense who's going to score.
Hey man, I agree. I'm just saying, I'll have a couple lineups paired with Harvin and Russell Wilson. Not a guy I'm necessarily going to load up on, but you're absolutely right. He has that monster game. Seems like they're just waiting for him to really kind of break out from it. Also a guy that returns kicks and punts, so there's always that possibility there. Interesting GPP combo with Harvin's price down is you could perhaps stack Harvin with Seattle D, get double points if he's able to return a punt for a touchdown. But outside of GPPs and outside of Russell Wilson in your cash games, I'm right there with you. Not a whole lot to love because especially this Rams D, they look good against Frank Gore, and I know Marshawn Lynch is better than Frank Gore, a little bit more fresh, not as old and banged up, but I just don't see Marshawn Lynch really going off and being the guy that you're gonna regret fading.
Yeah, the Jaguars are the only team giving up more points to defensive/special teams than the Rams this week, or than the Rams this season. So make sure to take a look at the Seattle defense. They're $3,200, very reasonably priced. Definitely on my radar for this Millionaire Maker and in cash games for sure. I'm a believer. I think they start turning around this week in St. Louis. Browns at Jags next game. Who would have thought this would be an exciting fantasy game, earlier in the season? But with the Jags here, Beer, you got Bortles, Shorts is back. You got Robinson, Clay Harbor, maybe Storm Johnson. If you want to play the weather card at all, maybe I don't know if that makes any sense here. What's your take on this?
Drum roll.
What's your take on this Jags team with Bortles? I have no problem throwing Bortles with one of these receivers in the Millionaire Maker for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags are what they are. They're the masters of garbage time. So that's what you're going to get. Now, I think in this game, this could be a letdown spot for Cleveland. I'm not calling the upset here, but I think the game's going to be a little bit closer than most would think. So it's tournament. It's long shots. It's Bortles, and you pair them with a Shorts. You pair them with a Robinson. Maybe you go back to the well and Hearn. So to me, there's not a lot here in cash games, obviously. I think Storm Johnson is still interesting. He's going to get the bulk of the work. So he's a guy to look at a cheap price. But again, it's tournament, long shots, garbage time. If they can keep the game close, I think either way, Bortles will get his numbers. Shorts looks to be the preferred target. Robinson's been pretty consistent. just not huge ceilings on these guys. They're going to get a lot of targets, a lot of looks. Are they going to put up huge numbers that it takes to win a tournament? I don't think so, which will limit my exposure to a lot of them. But Storm is interesting. I think he could have a good game here. Maybe get in the end zone again. Maybe get more than 1.5 yards per carry would be nice.
Yeah, the Browns aren't that great against the run. It looks like they're maybe 9th or 10th against the run in terms of giving up fantasy points to opposing running backs. No problem using Storm Johnson. Just there was a thing he said last week he was on 8 to 10 carry limit. Hopefully they up that a little because 10 carries is just a little too short for me to want to plug Storm Johnson into my cash games for sure. But in GPP, if you need some savings, no problem. Pretty much using Bortles, Storm, Shorts, or Robinson if you need to save some money. Let's get over to the Cleveland side here, Boggs. We got Brian Hoyer, a couple of wide receivers maybe, Jordan Cameron, but the guy I'm really targeting on DraftKings in both cash games, Millionaire Maker, and around the rest of the industry too, Ben Tate. He's 5,300 in this Millionaire Maker on DraftKings this week, going up against the Jags defense. I'm all over Ben Tate this week.
Oh yeah, baby. I am too. And we saw it last week. This Browns team, a lot of people kind of I'm surprised already talking about Brian Hoyer as a nice value play this week. But this Browns offense, it is predicated on running the football. The only time you'll see Hoyer go off is when they're trailing, and in which case they're forced to throw when they're behind by so many points. So when they're able to control the game like they did, they absolutely dominated the Steelers last week. You're going to see guys the running game really take over. So for me, that's Ben Tate. I even don't mind throwing an Isaiah Crowell in there for a GPP. Wouldn't put them both in there, but 11 carries last week. He's the clear number 2. They even deactivated Terrence West last week. So I'm liking Tate. I'm also liking Crowell as a GPP option. There are some better, cheaper options, I think, out there this week, kind of around that might, get some more guaranteed touches. But we've seen Crowell. This guy's the guy really waiting in the wings for Ben Tate to get injured again. But if you're going to take anyone from the receiving game, and I think that they're still going to focus on Jordan Cameron now that he's healthy. Monster week last week, still moderately priced. I do like him. But the wide receivers are a little bit of a question mark for me for Cleveland, so I'm not going that route.
Yeah, Hawkins was kind of, for the first couple weeks before Cameron was out, a lot of people were on him. I'm completely off of him now, completely off of Miles Austin. It's Tate, it's Cameron, maybe Hoyer, but I expect them to be running a lot in this game, so I am loving Ben Tate. And I don't mind Crowell either. He's 4,000 on DraftKings. Maybe you hope they blow him out and he gets 15 carries, 100 yards on a late touchdown. That is a possibility, and you're looking for kind of a home run in some of these huge top-heavy tournaments. Don't mind Crowell. He's going to be, 2% owned or less probably because he's a backup, and I think there's a possibility he has a pretty good week this week. Next game, Bengals at Colts, I think is a sneaky GPP game this week, targeting players from all sides in this game. Andrew Luck is expensive beer. He has got to be one of your top QBs every week right now. He's so good, even with limited weapons. T.Y. Hilton came back out and had a huge week. Reggie Wayne can always put up a solid performance in PPR. Ahmad Bradshaw, Trent Richardson, even though he's getting 2 yards a carry, seems to be doing good. Almost every Colt, Dwayne Allen, the Bengals horrible against tight end. Everyone is in play for me on this Colts team.
Yeah, the Colts are looking good. Luck, might be the MVP at this point. So he's playing that well, putting up numbers. And to me, it's shocking every week. His ownership levels are never as high as you would think they should be. And I think a lot of that has to do with pricing. And you can go back to that well this week. Let's look on DraftKings. Would you rather pay $9,700 for Luck or $9,000 for Manning? Pretty sure most of us would say Manning without a doubt, which to me makes Luck a great tournament play, a great way to get off of Manning and pivot to somebody else. Being contrarian doesn't always mean value. Sometimes it means paying more than anyone else is willing to pay. So if you overpay, and I think you are overpaying, in a cash game, to me, no doubt about it, I'd go Manning over Luck. In a tournament, I'll have them both, but Luck will be much less owned. So he's putting up numbers, 370 passing yards in like 4 weeks out of the 6 they played, touchdowns 2 to 3 a week. So we know Andrew Luck is a stud. Don't be afraid to pay up on him, even on FanDuel. they're the same price. The same thing applies. He won't be as highly owned as Peyton Manning. I promise you that. The running game, Bradshaw to me is the guy. Richardson's sneaky, a guy you can get under own. Hope he gets a touchdown. It doesn't cost you a lot. T.Y. Hilton has become the number one receiver there. Reggie Wayne, I love the guy. He's had a hell of a career. Looks like a corpse running around out there. So I think you're going to see him start to tail off. Hilton's the big play guy there, but the price has caught up to him. So a Luck Hilton stack is nice, but it's going to cost you. So just be wary of that. Dwayne Allen's my preferred tight end there. He's the guy they look to in the red zone. Not a huge fleener guy. So I think the passing game's where you want to go. Mix in some Bradshaw. Richardson's a sneaky option around the goal line. But don't be afraid to pay up for Luck. That's the biggest thing here with the Colts.
Let's go to this Bengals side of it here, Boggs. And I think these Bengals can be very sneaky this week. They performed well last week. I think this game's going to be a shootout. Their defense has looked horrible the past 2 weeks. I have no problem teaming up Dalton with Sanu. That sounds crazy. But in Indianapolis, I expect a lot of passing going on in this game. You got to love Gio Bernard. Gresham even, he had, I think, 6 for 7 for 60-something yards last week. That adds up in PPR and DraftKings. Even Tate, I forgot his first name off the top of my head here. I'm thinking Golden Tate. Brandon Tate, that's him. He had a decent week. He played about 78% of the snaps last week. He's going to be heavily involved. There's a lot of targets on this Bengals offense. What's your faith in Andy Dalton to Sanu this week?
I think that this one might be a trap. At least not from the entire team's outlook, but for Dalton to Sanu, especially if Sanu's going to be matched up against Vontae Davis, who's having another great season.
Yeah, I'd expect that for sure.
Earlier, when they did have AJ Green, even if he was out there for a decoy, Sanu occasionally will get looks in the slot, this and that, but it's just tough. For me, I'm just going to stick with what has worked and what will likely continue to work, and that's just roll with Gio Bernard. Obviously, in the big game, banged up his shoulder a bit, but he's able to return. He's not listed on the injury report. I think he's due for another heavy workload. It doesn't look like A.J. Green's going to be back this week, so for me, it's Gio Bernard, a guy who's heavily involved in the passing game. That's really all I'm loving. You mentioned Jermaine Gresham. Colts not that great against the tight end, but I think what we saw last week is pretty much his ceiling. And you didn't see Jermaine Gresham, unless I'm mistaken, on any of the top lineups in the Millionaire Maker. I just don't think it's going to be the same case. I think it's going to be the same case again this week. Just a guy that has a very, very low ceiling. That just isn't a guy that's going to carry you to the top in a tournament.
Real quick, do you think the Colts, with how potent their offense is, that they might be giving up a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks? Not the case. Where they really give it up is on the ground. Love Gio Bernard if you're looking for a sneaky play. Jeremy Hill as well. I think both of those guys are in line for good games on the ground for Cincinnati. Beer, the next game here, Vikings at Bills. We've got some of these Bills plays. Sammy Watkins, maybe some people will be off him. He was on Revis Island last week. They kind of forgot about him. Not going to be on a lot of people's radar. Could be sneaky this week. And you got to love Fred Jackson against the bad Vikings run D. Any interest in Orton to Watkins? And what's your interest in Fred Jackson?
I love Fred Jackson. He doesn't do anything spectacular. The ceiling's a little bit limited, but the floor is great. Makes him a great cash game play. Involved in the run game, the pass game, and always seems to get it done, and he's the goal line back. C.J. Spiller's getting phased out, so hearing a lot of rumors he's going to get traded, this and that. I don't know what they're going to get for him at this point. He really hasn't done much. So if you're still punching your C.J. Spiller train ticket, hoping for the big ride, I think you're going to be standing there waiting at the gate for a while. So I'm avoiding him. Orton to Watkins is a combo I like a lot this week. We saw Orton's ability to throw the ball downfield. Woods had a good game. The tight end, Chandler, had a 100-yard game. I heard it was the first game since 1992.
Yeah, what do you think? I think that was mainly due because they had Revis on Watkins. And I think people are going to forget about Watkins this week.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be all over Watkins in GPPs.
He's another guy. Check the six-pack. He is in there. A guy I'm very high on this week because, like, you're absolutely right. Revis shut him down. People are going to forget about him. You know, they might look at Robert Wood's stats, jump on him. They might jump on the tight end. I think you see one of the big games from Watkins this week. Minnesota's been good against the pass. Orton's pretty fearless, so he's going to throw it up. I think Watkins is better than these Minnesota corners. He's going to be a main target of mine in this game. So Jackson, Watkins, and I love the Buffalo D this week. I think Teddy's going to struggle again in this game against a pretty good defense. They give it up against the pass, but they're going to stuff that run. So Buffalo D, one of my top Ds of the week.
Yeah, I love the Bills D as well. Boggs, the Vikings offense. We had a stinker earlier. Who did we talk about? The Rams, maybe? Maybe it was Beer we talked about them. And I'm in the same boat here. There is not a single player on this Vikings offense I want heading into Buffalo, who is a very stout defense. I have no interest in any of these Vikings today.
Yeah, it's tough because we finally saw Jerick McKinnon really get full workload, if you can call it that, last week. He's the clear-cut starter. He's a great running back, but if they're not able to throw the ball at all, then I can easily see Buffalo just stacking the box, and it's going to be a frustrating effort for McKinnon. But
let me throw this out at you. The Bills this year giving up 8.7 fantasy points to a whole per game to opposing running backs. I want no part of that. Plus, I was reading somewhere, I think on Roto World, they want to get Asiata more touches, less McKinnon. Asiata can do things like pass block. I think they're going to be, figuring to be behind in this game, and they're going to want to get Asiata some touches. So I just want to point out that fantasy stat. Bills, best defense fantasy-wise against halfbacks.
Yeah, and a lot of that was compliments of the Patriots who don't have a running game and Donald Brown. But I'm not gonna say the Buffalo was a terrible play. A lot of people were on them last week. That one was a head scratcher to me. But they're still moderately priced. If Teddy Bridgewater's ankle is still a little banged up, could be an influx of sacks because they are capable of getting to the quarterback, and I just don't see Minnesota really breaking through and blowing them out like the Patriots did. So, it could be a nice bounce-back week for the Bills. I think a lot of people got burned by them last week. I'm with you on that. And as for the Vikings, there's just nothing I love outside of maybe McKinnon and GPP, but there's just better options at that price.
Yeah, Bills haven't even given up no rushing touchdown, no receiving touchdown to halfbacks this year either. I am completely off every single Viking this week. Miami's at Bears. Could be some fantasy goodness here, Beer. All your Bears are in play as usual. Fire up Cutler, Forte, Marshall, Jeffrey, Bennett. They all can't have good fantasy days. One of them is going to be kind of left out in the cold, but I think they are all startable, all reasonably priced around the industry.
Yeah, we don't need to go too in depth here. I think it's another good matchup. Chicago's tough to match up with because they have so many weapons. I mean, you see Forte, one of the most targeted players in the league, not just running backs, even with the receivers. So saw a ton of targets last week, turned it into another huge game. So it's only a matter of time before he got rolling. And as you see, as he goes, as Cutler goes, this offense goes. So I think Cutler, again, is putting up between 20, 25 fantasy points a week. I think he hits that again. Marshall, Jeffrey, both in play. Bennett's kind of come back down to earth, but still productive. So the prices come back down with them. So I think they're all in play. Forte is one of my top running backs of the week. Cutler's probably my top 5, 6 for quarterbacks. And I prefer Marshall to Jeffrey this week, but they're both in play. I think they're going to have another great game at home against Miami. So roll out all your Bears, no doubt about it. Cash, tournament, really doesn't matter. I think they're all in play in both formats.
We saw Steve Smith have a huge game when he played the Panthers. I expect Brandon Marshall to have a huge game when he plays the Dolphins this weekend here. The revenge game is real for certain guys. You could tell Steve Smith was going to have a good game. And Brandon Marshall, he kind of has the attitude too. I expect a huge game from him, and to really the Bears to really try to force him the ball and really kind of show Miami that they messed up. What's your take on that? Do you believe in the revenge game, Beer?
I do, and he's a guy that takes a lot of pride in his game. You've seen it with Steve Smith. Certain guys just have that chip on their shoulder. Marshall's definitely one of them guys. He's still Cutler's favorite target, so I think he has another big game, and the prices come down. he's almost a must-play on some of these sites where his price is at right now.
Yeah, DraftKings 6,300 going to be a staple in many of my lineups this week over there. Let's go to the Dolphins, Boggs. A couple guys in play here. Of course, you have No Sean Moreno out for the season. Lamar Miller, he's going to be the lead back. You hope they might mix in some Daniel Thomas. They kind of have a little hesitancy to give Miller, 25 touches a game, but he's going to get a big workload, one of the top running back values for sure. You got to like Mike Wallace and Tannehill as well in this game, especially if they get behind in Chicago. I think they might be forced to kind of air it out in Chicago here. What's your take on Miami?
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm not liking anything from Miami this week. Tannehill, don't worry about that questionable tag. He's going to play. But I mentioned it previously when we were talking about how Kyle Fuller shut down Julio Jones. Really the only receiving option that Miami has is Mike Wallace, and he's no Julio Jones. So I'm loving what this Fuller kid brings to the table, really kind of, bringing back parts of this Chicago defense in a way that, we haven't seen, at least at the, from halfway through the end of last season. Also on Lamar Miller, he's banged up, and anytime Daniel Thomas is vulturing carries from you, it's a disaster. So if Lamar Miller was fully healthy, I'd be all over him, but he's not. And the bottom line is they're on the road. They lost a tough game last week. It doesn't get any easier this week. They're probably going to be playing from behind, like you mentioned. So I don't hate Tannehill, but who's the second option? Are you really going to roll out Brian Hartline and expect something from him?
Jarvis Landry.
Landry, baby.
Hey, I don't know, man. That was one big week last week. I need to maybe do some more research on the kid, but I'm not seeing it for Miami this week. I think that Tannehill's going to be running for his life. So I'm not loving anything for Miami. I actually like the Bears D.
I wrote up an article today for a sleeper pick. The Bears D, outside of that one bad game to Green Bay, they've been pretty stout. They force turnovers. They get sacks. I have no problem using the Bears D as a off-the-board GPP play this week. Let's go to what am I at here? Saints at Lions here. Now, this game opened up with a 51 or 52 over-under, and I looked at that, and I was like, what is going on here? It's starting to come down. It's around 49 now. I don't even see that happening with how injured both these teams are. Beer, what's your take on the Lions here? Stafford, the running situation with Bush and Bell. I will say one guy is on my radar, Golden Tate. I do expect him to have a bounce-back game this week against the Saints' bad pass defense. But outside of Golden Tate, I don't see myself using many Lions this week.
I think they're in a good spot. The problem with the passing game is they become a defensive team and they want to run the ball, which is a great formula. Their defense, they got a bunch of bullies out there. That defense is for real. So they are a very sneaky defense. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on this week based on the fact they're going against the almighty Saints. The Saints aren't the Saints we know from the past, so don't be afraid to roll Detroit's defense out there. Running game-wise, I love what I saw at Bell last week. Bush being back, I see a lot of
more revenge.
Yeah, but I mean, how long's it been since he was in New Orleans? So I know he was let go unceremoniously. He's still upset about it, but it's been 3, 4, 5 years. You can't play the revenge card forever. It doesn't work that way. So I think they eat in each other's value. With him being back, make each one maybe a tournament play for me. Not guys I'm going to heavily target, though, to be honest. Even Stafford has turned into more of a game manager, especially with Calvin Johnson out. So I think the defense is a good play. I love Golden Tate this week. It's been very consistent. Had supposedly a down week last week. Still had a ton of targets and 7 receptions. So he's going to continue to see that workload. The price hasn't caught up to that yet. So this is a game I can't wait to watch, a big statement game for the Lions. They got a lot to prove, a lot to show people.
The Saints got to win, too.
New Orleans is still viewed as a power, whatever their record says. So this is still a big game for them. Golden Tate will be in a lot of my rosters, mixing in the running backs, a little bit of Stafford here and there. Again, don't be afraid to roster the defense. Should be able to cause some turnovers against Breeze.
Yeah, I love Golden Tate as a bounce back. He had 11 targets, I believe, last week. Caught 7 of them. Just didn't break anything. He's going to be heavily targeted in this game. Love him to have a bounce back game. Boggs, let's go to the Saints here. When Jimmy Graham went down, it kind of became the Cook show. He got tons of targets late in that game, a lot of dink and dunks underneath stuff. We've had Mark Ingram, looks like he's going to be back this week. So say goodbye to Kareem Robinson. It's going to be the Mark Ingram show. Kind of pollutes the backfield. I really want no part of that as well. So why don't you break down Breeze, Cooks, Colston, maybe some Stills, and do any of the tight ends on Tampa or on the Saints? Do any of them have any interest for you?
No, none of the tight ends do. But I'm curious to see if perhaps Colston kind of slots into some of those plays that they kind of had designed for Jimmy Graham. Because Breeze, one thing about the Lions defense, I do love their price, and there's definitely an upside there. I don't think they're going to be highly owned, but Breeze is a guy that he'll do whatever it takes to not get sacked. So keep that in mind. If Breeze is on his game, especially that could be a long one for Detroit. I'm not really liking it this week. On the road against a tough opponent, a great defense, but I think Colston is a sneaky play this week. It's obviously remains to be seen, but especially since this Detroit defense is very, very stout versus the passing game. So really, I kind of like Colston to get a bunch of targets to really be that safety net when guys like Ndamukong Suh are barreling down on Drew Brees. They get the big body mismatch against a 6-foot receiver. Colston's 6'5". That's the guy I'm going to be targeting this week. But if the Lions are somehow able, with their kind of inept offense to get the ball rolling and get a lead, Brees could be hey, when do you think we would say it? Like a sneaky kind of breakout guy for Drew Brees. But that's the way I'm kind of viewing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have very little Drew Brees shares. Maybe one if I was to run a whole bunch of tournaments or a whole bunch of lineups in this Millionaire Maker. I'll be sprinkling Brees in 5% of them maybe. I do like Brandon Cooks. When Jimmy Graham went down, he just got peppered with targets. I'm expecting a lot of little dink and dunk stuff as he gets pressured to go to Cooks. You seem to like Colston, 5,800. Love that price for Cooks, and if you believe in Colston, 4,300. As well. Maybe he can get a deep play or a touchdown. Don't mind that. But GPP only, no cash game for any of these Saints players for me this week. Who would ever thought, coming in this year, the Saints are in Detroit, and you would say none of these guys are playable in cash games. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Let's go to the next game on my list here, Beer. I know you're chomping at the bit to get to this one. We got the Panthers at your Packers here. Aaron Rodgers, top quarterback play of the week for me. Going against this Panthers defense. This running back situation, we talked about it earlier. Lacey and Starks, it's basically a timeshare. They are teasing us on DraftKings, 4,700 for Lacey. I am not biting. I will not be using Eddie Lacy in pretty much any game this week on DraftKings. A guy I will be using a lot of is the trio of the receivers, Nelson, Cobb, Devontae Adams. All three of those guys make great plays this week. You have to love the passing game for your Packers.
Oh, yeah. Love it, love it, love it. They are clicking on all cylinders right now. A huge win last week. Had no doubts when Rodgers got the ball back that he was going to go down and do what he did. So if I'm a Miami fan, I'm a little upset with the way they handled that. But anyway, we're looking at Week 7. So Rodgers right up there with Luck, Manning, top quarterback play every week. Same thing this week. Adams has really come into his own. His price is so low out there. He honestly, based on, I guess Jordy's the number one target, yeah, so he's my favorite, but Adams is a serious value out there. So if you're looking at price per point and all that stuff, Adams is going to be right there with Jordy and Cobb for me. So all three of them in play. I have no issues mixing them up in different stacks, putting them all maybe even in a stack. This should be a game that Green Bay should be able to put up some serious yards. We saw what Cincinnati did against Carolina. Been a weekly theme. Teams have been putting up big numbers against them, so they're all in play, obviously. Lacey is so cheap on DraftKings, he'll definitely make a couple of my teams. Tough on a site like FanDuel, though, where he's still priced up as an RB1. That's a pretty even split there, so I don't trust Starks enough to roster him. Lacey I'll put on a few teams. definitely targeting the receivers. Don't forget about Adams is my key here. He could have another big week this week. The price is right.
I have absolutely no problem in putting Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, Cobb, and Adams all in the same lineup in the Millionaire Maker. Would you have any issue with that, Beer?
No, I have no issues with it. It would last week. It would have worked. A lot of weeks we've seen Rodgers, Jordy, Cobb stack is always up near the top somewhere if they have a big game. I expect that again this week. Adams has really stepped into that role as the number 3 receiver. James Jones led the NFL in touchdowns in that role. So don't forget, all 3 guys will be used. Don't really have a tight end they're using right now. So no issues with that stack whatsoever.
Boggs, let's go to the Panthers side of this ball. We saw Cam Newton back last week running all over the field. It was mainly because they didn't have any run game. This week we get Stewart back. He's pretty much going to get 15 carries, 15 touches, I think, this week. Makes an interesting GPP play for me. The guys I'm really liking, though, Cam Newton, Benjamin Olsen. I expect them to get down very quickly against the Packers, and this game's going to turn into a shootout. Loving Cam, Benjamin, and Olsen this week.
I'm not.
You crazy. Go to the doctor and get your head looked at right now, Boggs.
Look, I mean, Cam Newton, in previous seasons, when they had Ding Dong Shula as the offensive coordinator and they had those designed runs for him, he actually was, a great, fantasy quarterback. But going into Green Bay, into Lambeau, after, going into overtime and tying the game last week, it's a tough matchup any way you look at it, and just because Jonathan Stewart's back doesn't mean he's 100%, and that's not going to alleviate any of the problems. Cam Newton's going to be running for his life in this game, running from Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers. I think, especially with Kelvin Benjamin, questionable. I expect him to play with a mild concussion, but also the Packers' defense being very effective against the tight end. It's gonna be a long day for Carolina, and I think this one's got blowout written all over it. And popular logic would say, okay, well then that's garbage time points for Cam Newton. I just don't see it this week, man. I'm probably sound like Beers because I should be sounding like a homer, but I just think this is going to be an absolute blowout, and I'm not on it.
Beer, what do you think? Are you on board with the Panthers this week, or am I crazy, or is Boggs crazy?
You're both crazy, but that's beside the point. I fall somewhere in the middle. I'm not as high as you. I'm not as low as Boggs. So I don't think Cam can put up the game he did last week. You don't really need that where his salary's at. So I think he'll be all right. Benjamin, a little banged up. I don't think it's as serious as people think. So, again, I fall in the middle somewhere. I think they could have a decent game. I don't think you're going to see huge games out of Carolina this week. So, somewhere in the middle.
Let's go to the next game here, Beer. The Chiefs, off the bye, go into San Diego to face the Chargers. You got to like some of the Chargers here. Rivers is always in play now. He's very consistent, one of the top-tier quarterbacks in the league. Question for you on Oliver. Kansas City hasn't given up a touchdown all season to a running back, either on the ground or through the air. We'll get to that in a second. Does that bother you at all? And this receiving core, you just never know. He kind of spreads it around. Allen Royal, Floyd, Gates. You never know who's going to get the touchdown or the receptions. I have no problem rolling Rivers without a receiver just for the fact that he spreads it around so much. And then give me your quick take on Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, I like Oliver. The stats are what they are. Kansas City's been good against the run, but and I was wrong last week. I picked Andre Williams over Oliver, so kudos to you guys. Oliver looked fantastic. I think he's here to stay. Even when Ryan Matthews comes back, I think San Diego's got something to think about there. This kid looked great, had 25-some touches, I believe, last week. Still looked as energetic as he did on the first touch with the last touch. So this is a guy that knows he needs to prove himself in this league. I think he's done just that. So I like him again this week, even with the price jump. I think he's in play based on workload alone. They're going to find ways to get this guy the ball. Rivers has been great. He's right up there every week, top quarterbacks of the week. No issues. Again, the receivers, you bring up a good point. Tough to say who's it going to be. I mean, you got to expect Keenan Allen eventually to bounce back. But we say that every week, and it hasn't happened. Floyd's been great. Gates has been having some good games. Royal's a little banged up. I don't know if he's going to be playing or not. Maybe Boggs knows more in that situation, but you're right. Rivers doesn't need a pairing. If anybody, I would pair him with Floyd at this point. He's the guy he seems to be looking to the most, especially in the red zone. Floyd's been playing great going up, catching the ball, high pointing the ball. So the receivers are all tournament plays for me. Rivers, Oliver, both. I don't mind them in cash games at all. And even the defense could be in play here. I don't really like Kansas City's offense, so I'm interested to see what Boggs thinks here about this game.
I will know real quick before we get to Boggs here. Normally he's nervous about his Chargers. Andy Reid, 13-2 off bye weeks. Does that have you nervous, Boggs? Let's talk a little Jamal Charles. He's priced down around the industry a little bit. Makes for a good play, I think, against this Chargers defense. I think he's pretty much matchup proof. Outside of that, not much I'm looking at on this Kansas City offense.
Yeah, it's actually kind of strange. How often is it where say you have like a good wide receiving option and a tight end, but you have no interest in a quarterback? Like usually it's the other way around. Like when we talk about Russell Wilson, how we don't like any of his receiving options. I love Jamal Charles this week, and I think Travis Kelce has got to be up there in terms of GPPs especially. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him. It says here on DraftKings that Travis Kelce has the toughest matchup against the Chargers, who are number one against the tight end. But can you name me one?
Yeah, it's garbage. They've gone off to garbage. So
exactly, they haven't faced a decent tight end, at least one with the explosivity and just dynamic receiving abilities that Travis Kelce has. So I'm liking Jamal Charles. I'm liking Kelce. I can never take Alex Smith. He's just not a guy that I like taking because he's got a low ceiling, low floor, just a game manager type guy. So I'm looking to Charles. He's going to be heavily involved coming off the bye week, and Kelce, who should be heavily involved yet again this week. I think a lot of people are going to see that first against tight ends and run away, but Kelce he's a monster, so I'm all over him.
Let me pose a question to both of you real quick. Jamal Charles, 6,700. Brandon Oliver, 6,300. If you had to choose between those two guys and those price points, who would you be taking in a cash game?
That's not a serious question, is it?
I was going to say, that's easy.
It's a $400. Well, you take a look. Just take a look at what Oliver's done. I think he's for real. But that just points out Jamal Charles' price is very cheap this week, guys. So don't overlook him in favor of some of the flavor of the weeks this week. I think he's in line to have a great game against this Chargers team.
Yeah, I think he's for real as well, but when you put him in a Jamal Charles category after 2 games, the guy's been great. Jamal Charles all day in that one.
Yep. Next game, guys, Cardinals at Oakland, and we saw Oakland kind of bust out, make people a lot of money this weekend with Carr, Holmes, and Jones. I think you can go back to the well this week against the Cardinals, who uncharacteristically are a very, very horrible pass defense this year. Are you going back to the well? I doubt we were on the well last week, any of us. I know Boggs did have some Oakland receiver exposure. But Beer, do you think people can go back to the well this week with Carr, Holmes, and Jones?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you usually don't talk about the Raiders in good light, especially on this show, but there's something there. I mean, they did it right by drafting Carr. Holmes is a guy I love. I mean, you saw it last year. A lot of people are just catching up to it now, saying, wow, this kid's a breakout. He showed a lot of this last year with Matt McGloin at quarterback. So the kid is an athletic freak. I heard a conversation, basically, I think it was on Football Guys, that said basically Andre Holmes and Carr are what we expected Jake Locker and Justin Hunter to be, which I thought was an incredible comparison. It's true. I mean, Hunter, Holmes, same type of receiver. Holmes is getting it done, though, and being very heavily targeted. The price jumped up on him a little bit, but he's a guy I don't even mind in cash games. So he's getting that many targets against one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Chalk him up. He's good. Carr should be another good game for him. Again, we've talked about it before. I know Boggs is a fan. I like the kid as well. He's got moxie. He's going to go down. He's going to throw the throws that other guys won't. He's going to attack this defense. So Patrick Peterson, whoever may be back there, he's going to take a shot. So I like Carr and Holmes again this week. I don't mind McFadden in a tournament. He's seeming to be the number one back under Sperano. James Jones is always a tournament threat for me based on his touchdown upside. But I'll be targeting Holmes a lot this week, and I'll be using a lot of Carr in tournaments as well. I think they're in for another good game.
Yeah, I think go back to the well this week. Usually you think the Cardinals have pretty good defense, but for some reason this year it's not coming together for them. I don't mind using any of those Oakland quarterbacks or receivers, maybe not McFadden. Carr's very stout against the run, absolutely horrible versus the pass. If the Raiders have any smarts, they're going to be passing the ball all over the field. Let's go to the Cardinals here, Boggs. I think all your main Cardinals back in play with Carson Palmer back in the mix here. Palmer's in play. Ellington, he's going to be even better with Palmer. Maybe, even with Palmer not at 100%, he got a lot of targets on the little dump-offs. Michael Floyd, I think, is back. Larry Fitzgerald possible as well. I'm loving this Cardinals offense in Oakland.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And here's a better question than the one you posed to us at the end of the last discussion. Andre Ellington or Jamal Charles this week?
I mean, still Jamal Charles, but I mean, I like Ellington. 6,500 is a little much when you consider some of the guys like Ben Tate at 5,300. There's only so you can only get 3 halfbacks on your team on DraftKings. So there's probably 6 or 7 that merit cash game consideration for their price this week. So it's going to be very tough deciding which of those 3 you want to make your lineup. But you can't argue Ellington at all this week if you want to roll him.
And, for that one, it's still easy for me. I go Charles just because he's a guy that can get the bulk of the carries, whereas Ellington, has he even gotten 20 carries once this season? I don't think so.
No, he gets a lot of PPR. He always gets those touchdown vultures, which is what kind of hurts him.
Yeah, but so does Charles, which is why I would lean towards Charles in that matchup. But I do think Ellington's in play. Also, another one of Beermakersfan's bromance guys, Michael Floyd. Definitely in play. I believe it wasn't it Fitzgerald the one that went off last week over Floyd?
Yep.
Regardless, with Carson Palmer back, an established quarterback, I think that Michael Floyd is back in play. I wouldn't necessarily I don't feel the need to stack Arizona in this one for whatever reason. I would probably have some exposure to just one pick, like if you have multiple lineups, take up Floyd or Fitzgerald. I obviously like Floyd for his deep playability, but I don't think you're going to see a winning lineup with Floyd and Fitzgerald. Am I wrong about that?
I think you might be able to see one or both. I'd be more apt to put Ellington in with one of the receivers just because Ellington's PPR, he's kind of like this mini Forte. He can catch a couple passes, break a touchdown. That counts for Palmer and for Ellington. And then I like Floyd and Fitzgerald, but I have no problem putting Palmer with Ellington and then one of the receivers.
Okay, yeah. And I think Cardinals D, even though they're on the road, a lot of people don't like to take road defenses. We saw what the Raiders did last week, but that was a big rivalry game, and in my opinion, Arizona's defense is better even on the road than the Chargers. So I think that you can line up the Cardinals defense, especially with this just poorly coached Raiders team. They could have opportunities for pick sixes, fumbles, turnovers, and special teams touchdowns in this one. So don't sleep on the Cardinals D.
That Cardinals kicker, the name's getting, it's slipping my mind, but he's been one of the best kickers in the league this year, guys. If you're planning on a site with a kicker, don't overlook him. Should be good weather out there in Oakland. Great kicking conditions. Giants at Cowboys here, Beer. Your 3 Cowboys. It's Romo, it's Murray, it's Dez. Murray's definitely has to be your top halfback play of the week just about everywhere. I don't mind Dez and Romo combination either if you want to roll that in GPP. But you have to be all over DeMarco Murray. It's tough to fit him in around the industry due to his high price, but he has to be one of your top halfbacks this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top halfback every week. Him and Forte have become 1-2, 1A, 1B, however you want to rank them. But Murray's just getting a crazy workload. So there's talk, when's he going to break down? We'll leave that for the season-long guys to worry about. Right now, I know he's healthy. He's going to get 20, 25, 30 touches. I'm all over it, especially against the Giants. So he's right up there, no-brainer. Romo has become more of a game manager. That doesn't take him out of play. This is always a game where you see a lot of points. Dallas, New York, typically is a game where both teams tend to be in the 30s, becomes more of a shootout type game. This is a different Dallas team, though. They want to run the ball. So we'll see. Romo, I have no issues in a tournament pairing him up with Dez. Dez, a top 5 guy in my opinion, always in play. Terrence Williams could be sneaky here. He's a guy not a lot of people look to roster. They're looking at Murray. They're looking at Dez. Williams has had some huge games playing out opposite of Dez. When the coverage rolls that way, he's the deep threat there. Witten, he's just a guy at this point. I don't think I have rostered Witten one time this year, so not a guy that I look to personally. I think Williams is your sneaky play, though. Could have a big game against the Giants here this week.
Boggs, let's get to this Giants offense. Now, a lot of people, including myself, we got kind of tricked into the Eli Manning pick last week after he has a couple of good games. Last year, he was horrible. He kind of tricked people the entire year. Is he going to keep, which Eli is going to show up this week? I am kind of going to be going away from him a little bit this week in favor of some other quarterbacks, but that's not going to make me not take Ruben Randall or Odell Beckham Jr. Both those guys are going to play just about every snap this week. What's your take on this Giants offense? And don't forget about Williams. Real quick, he had about the worst case scenario that could have happened to him last week, getting down early against the Eagles. Still managed himself 16 touches. I'm liking that as pretty much a floor for the amount of touches he can get this week, with upside for a little bit more. People might be off of him based on how poorly he performed last week. I don't mind going to Williams this week as a kind of off-the-board play where people might be a little off of him.
Okay, well, if you guys, weren't sold on me being crazy, you might after, this take here. I think Eli Manning is your Joe Flacco of the week this week. Not going to say he's going to throw 5 touchdowns, but
hold on, guys. I just got word. I have to disconnect Boggs from the feed right now.
Hey, listen. How many times have we said all season long that this Cowboys team is historically bad in defense? It's not going to be a good defense. They're horrible at pass coverage. They give up so much yardage. And to be honest with you, I know the recipe for why that it appears on the surface.
The secret is out. Tell everyone what it is. They're just not on the field.
Exactly. That's 100% correct. It's all coming down to DeMarco Murray, and I still think Murray's a great play because the Cowboys are going to stick with what works. But eventually, one of these teams is going to torch this Dallas team. And what better than division rival Giants, who have a very solid defense, in my opinion, that's very underrated, as opposed to this Dallas team who's very overrated right now. That has done very well against your standard offenses. They struggled last week because they got Chip Kelly with guys running all over the field, left and right. This defense, it's very old school, and it can stop an old school oriented offense. I think that the Giants win this game. I think Eli Manning has a big game, which means I love Ruben Randall and I love Odell Beckham Jr. even without Russell Cruz. And I'm loving me some bounce back potential for Larry Donnell this week. $3,500. I'm all over him on DraftKings. Still a little unsure about Andre Williams, but he's going to have to play a key role in this game if the Giants are going to be able to throw the ball. Otherwise, Eli Manning's going to be running for his life.
Beer, want to get your take on this as a game? A lot of people are going to have some, kind of decide, do they want to go back to Eli? Do they not want to? Do they want to use Williams? Kind of break down. I want to hear your view on this game as well.
Again, I'm not as high as Boggs. He's not crazy. He's on to something here. And I think it's a great bounce back spot for the Giants. Nobody's going to take Eli Manning. Nobody's going to take Larry Donnell. Dallas is horrible against the tight end. Let's not forget that. You get this guy at a discount. So people are going to look at the game logs and see 1 catch, 6 yards in the last 2 games. Nobody's going to have Donnell. Andre Williams, nobody's going to go back to that well. So I think Randall and Beckham may be more popular, but Eli, Williams, Donnell are going to be very, very underowned. I think this, like I said, this game always tends to be a shootout. New York is not nearly as bad as what we saw against Philadelphia. They're going to bounce back. Nobody's going to have them. Tremendous, tremendous tournament plays this week, in my opinion.
I believe I read something, too. while I was doing some research for this, so don't hold it to me if it's not true, but I think Eli Manning had 6 touchdown passes last year against the Cowboys in their 2 games. So he knows how to work against that Cowboys defense. Niners at Broncos, next game here. Now it's the, what do they call it when two things face off? It's Peyton Manning against the Niners defense right here.
Unstoppable force versus the immovable object.
Yeah, there you go. So where
wrestling, man?
Where are you coming out? Where are you coming out on this? I am not concerned at all about Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas at all. Patrick Willis might even be. I think I was hearing some injury reports for him. Not sure what's going on with him. Maybe you know. But are you concerned at all about Peyton Manning going against his Niners defense? I think you get some very low ownership on these Broncos players this week.
Not concerned at all, and I think you're wrong on the ownership. San Francisco's D's been good, but, I mean, who have they really played? Yeah, they played Philadelphia. They did all right. This is Denver at home on the primetime stage. So the biggest thing with Manning, he always shows up in primetime. He's got the touchdown record in his sights. They're going to go after this record. Makes Manning a no-brainer, in my opinion. He's going to get that record in this game. I almost guarantee it. So he's in for a big week. I hear that Patrick Willis is not going to play from what I read. So they are good against the tight end. But Julius Thomas is on a whole other world right now with 9 touchdowns already. Has scored in every game. So I'm not going to go and look at the stats and say San Fran's good against the tight end. I'm not playing Julius Thomas. BS. I'm rolling out Julius Thomas. I'm rolling out Manning. I'm rolling out Demaryius. I'm going back to the well on Sanders. I think you can write Welker off. Some people are still waiting for that ship to sail. Don't think it's going to happen. The running game, I don't know. I don't think you're going to see as productive of a game from Ronnie Hillman. San Francisco still is good against the run. I think this is all about Peyton Manning. And when he rolls, all his weapons roll. Roll him out there because he's going to have a huge game.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the Niners at all either. I'll definitely be trying to get as many Broncos into my lineups, especially in GPPs when I can. Boggs, let's go to the Niners here. I was really hoping Colin Kaepernick would kind of put up a stinker against the Rams, and I could get him low owned at a low price on DraftKings in cash games and in tournaments. And I was looking pretty good on that through the first, what is it, not a half, but just under a half till he threw that bomb, then he came out and smoked the Rams. Kaepernick's got to be a top cash game play at $6,500. It's just too low in what looks like a shootout in Denver. High floor with the running and a very high ceiling he showed last week. Love Kaepernick. The only problem is I can't touch any of these halfbacks. It's kind of hard to tell who's going to go off with the receivers. Vernon Davis, he's very touchdown dependent. Pretty much Kaepernick's about it, all I'm looking at, and I'm looking to deploy Kaepernick a lot this week.
Yeah, I think that's a fine strategy. He's not my number one price play, and kind of to be quite honest with you, I think that in terms of safe cash game plays, that at around that same price range, you might disagree with me, and I should disagree with you, but I think Russell Wilson is a little bit safer. Kaepernick is not. He's just not as consistent on week to week. He can have some really, really bad weeks if you know how to, have a good defensive game plan against him. But I do think that I'm going to have some exposure to him. I think it's definitely necessary in a game that they could be playing from behind. Obviously, a guy that has wheels, he can run the ball. And if they're able to get anything going with Frank Gore, it's going to open the play action up for Kaepernick to hit one of the many receivers. Don't tell me which is gonna emerge. But I think Kaepernick can have a good game. I think he's in a good spot. I think he's a tremendous play. But I would rank Russell Wilson a tad bit higher at the same price range in terms of safety, in terms of getting to that floor for me. But I could be wrong. But for me, it's Kaepernick. And I'm right there with you. And I'm not touching anyone else.
Beer, real quick on you, what you're taking the Niners. This is going to be one of the more higher scoring games of the week. A lot of fantasy goodness, so real quick, what's your take on the Niners?
I'm going to disagree with Boggs. I love Russell Wilson this week. I wrote him up in my tournament article because I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. But if I had to choose
I
between
think you're agreeing with him because he's all over Russell Wilson.
no, I'm agreeing to that point, but if I have to choose between the two, I'm going Kaepernick, especially in a cash game. So in that sense, I disagree. I like them both this week. I think Wilson will be the more under-owned of the two. So in a tournament, I might lean that way. But in a cash game, I would probably go Kaepernick. So they're going to have to keep pace. So he's going to have to do what he does. The receiving weapons, it's going to be hard to pair him with anybody. I don't think you necessarily have to. He has a lot of different weapons that he uses. Each week it seems to be a different guy. So Kaepernick will be my main target from the Niners this week.
Last game of the week, Texans at Steelers. I think there's going to be some fantasy goodness for sure in this game. The Steelers beer, and it's pretty much three guys. It's Ben, it's Le'Veon Bell, especially on DraftKings this week. His price is very, very reasonable. I think he's going to be one of the highest owned cash game players. And Antonio Brown as well. Pretty much always a lock for 7, 8 receptions, can flirt with 100 yards and a touchdown. He's almost a lock. He is a lock to get 5 receptions and 50 yards every game. Anyone else in the Steelers offense intrigue you? I just have those three guys.
I've been working on math with my first grader, and they're on subtraction. So I'm gonna take your 3. I'm gonna subtract 1, and I'm gonna leave myself with 2. So
no Big Ben. Ben's gonna be leaving.
Not a big fan of Big Ben. Brown is always going to get his numbers, but beyond that, Wheaton's been hit or miss. They really haven't used Heath Miller. Lance Moore's getting a few targets here and there, so I don't want anything to do with Ben. Brown's a stud every week for me. Top 3 option, no doubt about it. Just gets so many targets. You always have to look at Brown. His price came down a little bit. He's my top receiver of the week overall. And Le'Veon Bell, you brought it up. Great price point on him this week. Texans have given it up on the ground. I expect Bell to have a big bounce-back game. It's been good. We haven't seen a huge game out of him, and he really hasn't gotten in the end zone at all, so that's what's held him back.
Todd Haley is calling some strange plays when they get into that red zone, let me tell you.
And it's not one stealing touchdowns because he's only got 1 or 2 as well, so they like to throw in the red zone, which is fine. But to me, leave Big Ben off. Brown and Bell will be big-time targets of mine.
Bell at 6,600, Charles 6,700. Who are you taking?
I'm going Bell on that one.
Yeah, I think I have to too. Bell, he's pretty much he's so safe, and then he has the upside if he gets a touchdown or 2. Boggs, let's go to you. The other side of that game, to me, there's one guy who is just poised to have a huge game, and that is Arian Foster. He's 8,300 on DraftKings when you compare him to a Charles at 67, Bell at 66. He's going to be very under-owned because his price is high, and I think in the Millionaire Maker for a Monday Night Sweat, you can lock this guy into some lineups and be very happy with his results he's going to give you.
You can be very happy going into that, but not at the very end. No, but I'm not going to disagree with you here. Arian Foster, go ahead, light him up, and that should wrap it up because there's nothing else I love. I can't even trust his defense. And on your point about Todd Haley, yeah, that guy's a dick, man. Le'Veon just, what do they have, like three goal line drives where they ended up on the goal line, and everyone, I think Garrett
Blunt gadget pass plays, and I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, he's a moron, but that's the reason he's not a head coach anymore. And then he went back to Pittsburgh and pissed Ben Roethlisberger off. So maybe it's who knows what that's all about. But yeah, Arian Foster, light him up. A guy that's solid for your cash games. The price is what you would expect to pay for a guy of his caliber. The offense is going to be centered right around him. So intriguing option for me is perhaps if Pittsburgh's able to get a lead in this game. I think Andre Johnson might have a big game, but again, that goes to predicting game flow, predicting how it's going to go, which is always a difficult thing to do. But I don't hate Andre Johnson as a sneaky play from this Monday night game. I do agree with you guys. I definitely think a winning lineup in this Millionaire Maker this week is going to have some exposure to this game, and it's going to be a hell of a sweat. But
yeah, someone's going to be way back. And Arian Foster, they're going to have Antonio Brown, there's going to be an Andre Johnson in there, and those 3 guys can put up 100 points. There's going to be guys coming from way back up the leaderboard on Monday night for sure.
Yep, going to be a different story than we saw this week, that's for sure. So definitely going to be some good sweats.
All right, guys, that about wraps it up here. If any of you guys are in chat, I'll stick around for a couple minutes. Maybe one of the other guys will as too to answer a couple questions for you. But we're going to get out of here. Anything you guys want to say? I'll start with you first, Chris.
No, I mean, congrats to Smiz on taking down another Q. Congrats to the newest millionaire over there in DK. Anyone else out there that won qualifiers, big tournaments, congratulations. That's what it's all about. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We love to do the show with you guys, the chat. Awesome, as usual. Good luck in week 7.
Boggs, anything you want to say before we head on out of here for the night?
You should start off with me from now on because I can only echo that sentiment. Good luck this weekend, Grinders. Congrats to all the Grinders community players that had big weeks, notably Smiz, just crushing it already this NFL season, and we're not even halfway through. So stay tuned. Listen to all the experts. Especially as we get closer to kickoff because there's some good knowledge out there.
Yeah, guys, thanks for watching, as always, here on Roto Grinders. Plenty more NFL content. I think there's 4 or 5 more shows throughout the week. Another one tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Make sure to check that out. For my co-hosts, Paul Boggslite Arrington and Chris Beermakersfan Prince, guys, we out ya.